Hey guys, Robert at 3D Printscape. So Acmer reached out to me asking if I wanted to review their new P1S Pro engraving kit. This is a solid entry-level or budget-friendly engraver. So I said sure, so they went ahead and sent it to me. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and do a quick unboxing, cover the assembly, getting it connected to the computer. I will be using Lightburn for the software, so just keep that in mind if you're using something else. And then I'm going to go over a couple of test engraves that I did. Now, I did want to make a note here that this is a 6-watt laser. If you've watched my laser wattage video, I say around the 5-watt range is perfect if you're looking to do any type of engraving. It can engrave on many things. If you're looking to do more heavy-duty cutting, this might not be the option for you, but I have gone through 1/2-inch oak with a 5-watt laser. You just got to do like 10 to 12 passes. So if time's not really important and you just want to let it go, then this can pretty much do quite a bit. And I did want to make a note here that the price is around $200 for this whole setup. And frankly, I thought that was actually pretty reasonable, considering I've spent more than $200 for kits that actually attach to like my Ender 3, for example. So this comes with the entire setup, everything you need to really get started with it for a price that's pretty reasonable. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. If you have any questions about what I'm covering or would like to see any other videos, go ahead and leave a comment below or join us on Discord. Thanks. All right, guys, so here we have the Acmer P1S Pro Laser Engraver. This is a 6-watt diode laser. So let's go ahead and open up the box and see what's all in it. All right, guys, now that we open up the box, you can see here it looks like everything is packaged pretty well. We have a couple sample boards we can use for testing. Looks like the instructions here. All of the hardware for the installation. The safety goggles. USB cable and power cables. Our railing here. So we got all the rails. Go ahead and set these off to the side. The other part of the power cable, the actual power supply block. Our controller. The rest of the hardware for the installation. It looks like there's also a SD card in here as well, and the spacer we'll use for the height adjustment. Over here we have the laser itself. You can see that it's got a nice little engraving on it, which kind of looks cool. Then we have the Z-axis that's partially assembled. And then the additional parts to build out the axis. Alright, so we got that. A stepper motor here. And then over here we've got the 3 feet. The 4th foot is actually attached to the controller box. And that is almost everything. Oh, sorry, one more piece here. We'll just go and set this off to the side. All right, so that's everything in the box. You can see that it was packaged pretty well. Nothing got damaged. And let's go ahead and take all the plastic off and start the assembly. All right, guys, so let's start putting this together. I got the instruction manual out and I got some of the parts just separated so I can actually work. I do like that they have each of the bags with the hardware labeled. So you got like here, step 1, step 2, etc. So it tells you what parts or what hardware you need for each one of the steps, which is actually kind of nice. So let's go ahead and start. All right, so we're gonna go step 1 here. We need this bag. Let's go ahead and open that up. All right, so the first thing I did was I went ahead and took the longer 2 poles here and laid them out. The one with the measurements are gonna be on your left here, and your belts are gonna be on the bottom, and then the other one's gonna be on the right. Make sure you have the laser etching on the outside, just for looks. And then we're gonna go ahead and attach the control panel to this left side here. So it's gonna be this one right here. All right, so we're gonna want to use the middle size bolt here. It's gonna go on the second one. So when we attach this here, we're gonna put it like this, and the bolt is gonna go on the second one. The first one where it attaches to the X-axis in the front is gonna be the longer. So just kind of put this in place. And try to make sure that when you're doing this, that it's even and straight. All right, I'm just going to loosely put this on for this second. And then the M5, so the short one here, is going to go on the front. And it'll be the same on the other side too. So let me turn this around so you can see what I'm doing here. All right, so the M5, so the shorter one's going to be in the front. The M16, which is going to be the middle size one, is going to be on the back here. And then when we put the other axis on here, it's going to be the M30, which is going to connect all the way through there. So it's just going to kind of loosely tighten these, just to the point that they don't move around. All right, then let's go ahead and do the same on this one, but with one of the edges here. And then the short M5 in the front again. All right, so just showing this so you can see it. The short M5 goes in the front, the M16, the middle size one, goes here. And then when we put the X-axis on here, it's gonna be the M30, so the longer ones will go there. And your belt should be coming backwards, and the laser etching should be on the outsides of these. All right, once that's done, we're gonna go ahead and grab the smaller one here that has Acmer on it, so the logo, and it's gonna go just like this. So we will put the 30mm ones through the side here so it connects all of that. And then there'll be the two 16s will go here and here, which I'll show you here in a second. All right, now that those two longer ones are in, we'll put the medium ones onto these holes in the front. I'll show you here in a second again, but there's only one spot they go. All right, so just turning this around here. The two M16, so the middle size bolts go here and here. The 5 ones, so the small ones, go here and here. The 30s go, which are the two long ones, go through and connect to the actual rod here in the middle. And then the other 16s connect in the back. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten all of this up. Just make sure when you're tightening it that everything is flush through here. All right, so step 1 done. I'm actually just gonna set this off to the side. For step 2, we're going to assemble the X-axis components. One thing I noticed about this one versus some of the other lasers I've worked with is this one requires some assembly on the X-axis, which isn't a huge deal, but some of the other ones come fully assembled, so you just slide it on. So I guess just a little bit of feedback there. Not a big deal, but something to consider. All right, so we got our X-axis. And this step, we're gonna need step 2 for the parts. So go ahead and open this up. All right, I'm just setting this hardware off to the side. Pay attention that there are 2 different types of bolts here. Both are M3. One is the M3-6 and one's M3-8. So these ones have more of a flush mount on them, so that when it's actually connected, it'll be flush. The other ones have more of a thumb type turn on it, so it has a little bit of a grip on it and it will stick out more. All right, so we need our stepper motor, the X-axis rod here, and this is just going to connect like so, and then you're going to tighten down this bolt so that it's connected. All right, just make sure that's good and tight because you don't want the stepper to be turning and not actually turning the rod here. All right, now we're going to go ahead and grab this assembly here. I'm turning it this way since it's the way I'm facing, but the letters are going to be facing you when you're doing this. And you're going to put the other assembly through here at the bottom, and essentially it's going to come through and connect in this bearing over here. And then it says make sure that the socket is facing the rear, so we'll turn this around so that it's facing the back like so, because this is our front. And then there are the 4 bolts we have to put in here to hold this in place. And that's going to be with the M3-8, so not the flush mount bolts or screws. I would position all 4 of them in there and then tighten them down. All right, next we'll attach the wire bracket. So I'm going to raise this up. It will go right here, basically like this, with the 2 other M6 bolts, or M3-6. All right, with that done, I will say that was surprisingly more difficult than it should have been. It was just difficult to get those bolts in that small area. But it's done, so we can move on. Next, we want to just go ahead and lay this flat and we want to grab our laser adjustment. This is basically just going to sit here, and we'll use these 4 other bolts that we have to secure it. And this is what we're going to use to actually adjust the height of the laser before the prints. All right, now that that's done, we're going to assemble the rest of the frame. So we'll open up step 3 here, grab our hardware. So like with step 1, we have the 3 different size bolts. We have 2 of the 5mm, 2 30, and 4 of the 16s. So basically the same thing. The 5s are going to go in the front, the 30s are going to go through the access rod, and then the 16s are for the rest of them. So let me go ahead and grab this frame. All right, so now we are going to put this assembly on. We'll just pretty much slide it through the wheels here. If it's too tight or not moving easily, you can loosen the wheels so that it does. So it says we don't have to worry about the belt just yet, so we'll get back to those. Just make sure that you have the orientation so that this laser is facing the front, and same with the engravings here. And then we'll put our mounts on here, and then we'll put the back X rod on. All right, now that those are roughly in place, we can go ahead and grab the other rod here, and it's just going to go just like this so that the engraving is towards the back. And again, we're using this. We're using the 16mm screws here, so the middle size ones for this. All right, and then we'll go ahead and put the 30mm through, so it goes through all of it. All right, then with all of those in place, we'll go ahead and tighten it down. Just make sure everything is flush. All right, so now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and go to step 4. So we're going to need the bolts out of here. So let me open that up. And then it shows this being flipped over so we can work with the belt. All right, so on each side, what we want to do is we have to feed the belt under the first wheel. And if you have any tweezers, this is going to help significantly, but we got to grab the belt once it's through and then bring it around, raise it up basically so the belt is under the wheel on the smooth side. The grooves go over onto the actual pulley here and then back under the wheel on the other side, and then it will feed out the back. Just like so. Then we'll do that on the other side. All right, then pull those both out the back, keeping them tight. All right, now we got to take the bolts that were in step 4, and what you do, I'll kind of show you from this side here, is you'll put it into the groove like so, and then turn the bottom so that it's flush, and then you'll tighten this down so it's holding the belt in place. And then as you're tightening this, it should kind of turn the groove so that it's underneath the actual aluminum framing, and that's what's going to hold it in place. And it should be about at the same spot as this back rod is. All right, and then once that's tight, we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, then we can go to flip this back over, and we can go to put the laser module on. So this is basically just going to slide onto here, and then it's going to stop with this thumb screw. You just tighten it to where you need it. All right, guys, I went ahead and turned the laser around so we can work with the wiring. We only have a couple axes to work here, so it won't be too bad. One thing I did want to make a note of, I did remove the tape from our 2 end stops off camera. So if you have tape on it, you're going to want to just remove it really quick. All the cables are labeled on where they plug in. So let's go ahead and snip this wire tie and go ahead and run everything. All right, so first on the shorter ones, we have the X stop, Y stop, and our Y axis. So we're going to plug those in. So obviously the Y axis, this is the Y stop here, because when it's moving on the Y axis, it's going to hit this to actually engage the stop. And then our X stop. And then these wires will kind of sit out here a little bit, and they'll just move along with the axis. Which shows a little bit more cable management here, but there's not much you can do because you have to be able to allow it to move. And then this is going to come up and feed through here. And your X-axis is going to actually feed along the groove here. And just plug in over here. And then your laser, it says laser on it. It's going to plug into the laser. All right, now we're going to go ahead and attach the wire ties I provided so the cables don't go everywhere. There's a little groove right down here. First one is going to go in there, and you can kind of just tie this in place so that it doesn't pull from the stepper motor. And then this is going to feed up. So you're going to put 1 or 2 wire ties through here to keep this in place. And then I also put the wire going to your X stop in one of those as well. And you can just trim those as you finish it or at the end. All right, now for the wire going over to the X-axis stepper motor. Like I said, it should be in the groove a little bit so that the wheels aren't going to hit it. And then they have this plastic piece. It kind of just goes in there and pops and holds everything in place. And then you'll want to connect your wires to this side as well for your laser. All right, so it almost feels like the cables should come through here and then feed out, but they don't. So what I'm going to do is basically just feed this around like so, so that the laser wire is coming over, and this is connected in here so that when it moves, it's not going to hit the wheels. That's the main thing. All right, so that pretty much covers the assembly. We'll jump over to the computer and kick off a couple tests. Before we do that, I just wanted to walk around the unit really quick, kind of show you my initial thoughts. All right, so I'll turn this around so we can do that. So here we have our main control box. Power and everything is going to go on your right side. Your on and off switch is on your left side here, along with the Wi-Fi antenna. I like all of the carvings, or more, I guess, etchings for the design. Makes it kind of look cool, stand out a little bit from some of the ones that are just plain. Doesn't really functionally have a difference, but kind of just looks a little bit nicer. The wiring was a little bit weird for me. I mean, it does work, but I can see it potentially getting in the way. So after I run a couple tests, I'll provide some input on that at the end, see if it actually did or not. I like how they do the height adjustment on this. It's pretty simple. Like if you're engraving or cutting into this board, you just remove the protective cover on the bottom, put your spacer down, lower the laser till it touches the spacer, tighten that back up, and you're good to go. Then you would put your cover back on if you want it, which is just magnetic. One thing that I'm not surprised that it doesn't have at this price point, but you can add in the future if you want, if you're doing a lot of engraving or cutting and you're starting to see the burn marks around the edges. They have a air pump system. It's a little bit pricey, but it's not too bad compared to some of the ones I've seen. That's an add-on that could potentially help this. There are a bunch of other add-ons as well, such as like a rotary tool. So if you want to do a type of engraving on round objects, they have options for those expansions, which is nice. The laser is only 6 watts, so like I've mentioned a couple times, it's not going to be the best for cutting, but you can do cutting, just not very thick in one pass. If you want to do more passes, that'll always work. It just takes more time. But at 6 watts, you can pretty much engrave mostly anything that any type of diode laser would be able to engrave. I do like how they adjusted the laser point, which I'll show you here on the computer as well. Go into that in a little bit more detail, but it's a little bit more precise than some of the other ones. But for the price of this unit, I think it's actually a really good price. I mean, I've paid more than the $200 for this for expansions that would connect back into like your Ender 3 or something. So the fact that you're getting all the railing and everything with it is nice, especially at the price point. It really just depends what you're looking for. So it's not a large unit, it's not a small unit, it's a good medium-sized unit for engraving. I am going to do the engraving and like a little enclosure I bought for those, just because I keep setting off the smoke detectors in my house. So I'll link to the one I bought below if you're interested in something like that. They are a good option as well. All right, guys, sorry about the background noise. I do have the laser going because we're going to go connect it here in a second. Before we do that, this is what I wanted to talk about when it came to the laser beam itself. The P1S Pro has pretty much a thinner beam it's more powerful. So overall, it has a higher cutting ability than the same wattage laser, which has a wider beam. So if you look at this here, it's saying like the ordinary laser, or the overall width of the laser here is 0.23 millimeters, where with the P1 it is 0.06. So that's going to be just a lot sharper of a laser. It's going to, in theory, be able to give you better cutting ability, making it probably close to a 10 watt, but don't quote me on that. But be able to engrave a little bit better as well, because that beam is going to be thinner. So let's go ahead and jump over to Lightburn and set up the engraver. Now I did want to make a note that Laser GRBL is also supported, which is open source software that you can use. I prefer Lightburn. It's just a lot easier to use, and it's a little bit of an investment, but it's one I made a while back. But it does come with 1 free month, so if you wanted to try that out, you can. So let's go ahead and set that up. So let's jump over to Lightburn. Now I wanted to make a note that I do have the laser connected to the computer via the USB cable it came with and powered on. So I'd recommend you doing the same before you get started here. You go down to devices if you're not already at this section and create manually. Then go down to GRBL, which is going to be this one, and then click next. Now we're connected via USB, so we're going to keep this selected and hit next. And then we'll call this P1S Pro, but you can call it whatever you want here. And then we have to set the working area, and our working size is 380 by 370 millimeters. So go and hit that, hit next, and our home is the front left of the laser. So hit next again, and then leave it set to auto start home, or auto home on laser startup. All right, just review everything here. GRBL 380, 370, USB, so looks good. Hit finish, and then we're going to select this, hit OK, and we should have a connection to the laser. So if we go over to console, you should see here that it is homing. And it completed the homing just fine. And I just went over and looked at the laser. It is homed in the front left position. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple test engravings. If you haven't used the software before, I have a couple videos covering Lightburn itself. If you anything specific you want to learn, let me know and I'll create a video covering that. Alright guys, there's one other setting that you have to change. I didn't have to change it because I already was using lasers with the software, but if you go into settings, let's go up to settings right here. You want to make sure that it's set to millimeters a minute, not millimeters a second. Since these are diode lasers, you're going to want the millimeters a minute. So that's going to impact your speed and everything over here. So if you're seeing MMS here, you're going to go into settings and change that. So first thing we're going to do before we print this Kraken test is the material test. I guess I'm going to do it twice. So if you go into laser tools, go down to material test. I'm going to do it with just outlines with the default settings, and then infill with the default settings. So now the fill mode is fill. So if I do a preview, it's going to look like this. And then all of your outside are going to be the minimum settings. And if you want to change it for the other tests I'm going to do here, just switch it to line and then do preview. You'll see that it just does the line at one pass and at those speeds. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off these prints and I will show them to you when we're done. All right guys, so now I wanted to show you a couple just grid examples. Here I just did a single pass cut, so the outline, and then ignore this, I'll show you on the other side, but I actually did fills. But this is ranging from 10 to 100% in power, then from 600 millimeters a minute up to 18,000. All of that's adjustable in the software. I just went with default settings because it was a good starting point. And I know you can't really read the outline much. That's because it was one of the lightest points. But you can kind of see a good example. If you're looking to cut or do outlines, when you get down to the 600 at 100%, it almost goes through in the first pass. So if you go down to about 300 at 70 to 8, anywhere between probably 70 to 100, you can do another grid test. It will definitely cut through this basswood with one pass without much of an issue. Keyword there being one pass. You can do multiple passes if you have to go through thicker material. All right, now let me flip this over. All right, so here's basically the same test, but with an infill shading versus just the outline. 10 to 100% power, and then 600 to 1800 millimeters a minute. You can see at the 600, it does start really burning the wood, even at the next layer up. But if you're looking for a good infill percentage, I went around 6,000 millimeters a minute at 40 or 50%. I'll show you that here on a engraving that I did of the Kraken. And if you're just looking for something light, you can go up here. But overall, it's a very capable engraver. Just make sure you run these type of grid tests on any material. I've said this before, but you got to know what you're working with. Yeah, but right around here, which was 6,000 millimeters a minute and 50% power, that's what I did the engraving on. So let me show you that next. Here's a nice engraving of the Kraken. This is 200 by 200 millimeter board widthwise. One pass, really nice detail. I did threshold for the image type, so that's how it's set. You can feel slight indents for the engraving. With the power that we did, I didn't want to go too deep with it, just because I want it to be visible, not really indented. But yeah, it turned out really nice, great detail. I was quite pleased with it. All right, so here's a extra piece of slate I had. It's actually from a coaster. The other side is white for sublimation, but I did a quick test on it. I actually wrote the speeds and the power just so you can see it a little bit better, because you couldn't see it at all. But it's going from 10 to 100% power and from 600 to 18,000 millimeters a minute, just doing a 5x5 grid. So you can see here at 610%, you can get nice little color. If you're sticking at that speed, you're starting to get some yellowing. So you're kind of burning the material a little bit, and there's a little bit of a raised texture on it. Once you get to about the midpoint here, and about 35–40% power, you start to see some good color and some good detail. If I had a bigger piece, I want to do like an engraving like the Kraken on a piece of slate, see how that turned out overall. But this I figured would just be a good example to show you that it is able to actually engrave on the slate without any issues. All right, guys, so that covered everything you need to do to get started with the Acmer P1S Pro. Like I said during the video, I think overall it's a great laser for the price. The 6-watt laser is kind of odd, but with the adjusting of the wavelength, I think if you're looking at cutting power, it gets closer to like the 8 to 10. I haven't actually tested that, but I'm seeing similar results to the 10-watt laser I had when I did just a couple passes with the cutting. So overall, very capable machine. I like the quality of the engraving, especially at that price point. And then there really was no negatives about this machine. It does everything it's supposed to do at a reasonable price. The setup took a little bit longer than some of the other ones, but that's not a big deal. It's a one-time thing. So overall, I was happy with this machine. It does, like I said, what it's supposed to, and it performed pretty well. If you have any questions about what I covered or would like to see any other videos, go and leave a comment below or join me on Discord. And if you have any other specific tests you'd like me to run with this machine, let me know. I'd love to do some more with it as well.